On the evening of November 14, 2022, emergency services in Vail, Colorado, received a distress call reporting a severe vehicle incident on a secluded mountain pass. Responders arriving at the location observed a silver Mercedes-Benz sedan that had impacted a safety barrier and subsequently descended into a deep ravine, sustaining extensive damage. Inside the vehicle, Elias Thorne, a 52-year-old resident of Vail, was pronounced deceased at the scene due to extensive trauma. His wife, Anya Volkov, 25, was found outside the wreckage exhibiting a heightened state of emotional distress with minor physical abrasions. She reported that the vehicle had veered off the road unexpectedly. Initial assessments by local law enforcement suggested a tragic accident, potentially attributed to impaired driving given the challenging road conditions and the late hour. The scene was processed and a preliminary report was filed classifying the incident as accidental. Public sentiment, fueled by Anya Volkov's portrayal as a grieving widow, initially aligned with this conclusion. However, the systematic collection of evidence, particularly the forensic examination of the vehicle and the subsequent autopsy report for Elias Thorne, would eventually reveal discrepancies that challenged the initial narrative, initiating a more profound investigative scrutiny into the circumstances surrounding Mr. Thorne's death.
The initial classification of Elias Thorne's death as an accident resonated with a public accustomed to the inherent risks of mountain driving. Elias Thorne was a renowned architect known for his significant contributions to the Boulder and Vail architectural landscape. His public image was one of success, affluence, and the embodiment of a specific iteration of the American dream. The sudden loss of such a figure, particularly under what was initially presented as tragic circumstances, generated significant public interest. However, beneath the surface of this seemingly straightforward incident lay a confluence of factors that would soon elevate the case from a local tragedy to a complex criminal investigation. The rapid succession of Elias Thorne's marriage to Anya Volkov, coupled with the substantial financial restructuring that preceded his death, began to attract the attention of seasoned investigators. Detective Sergeant Lena Hansen, assigned to review cases involving significant financial implications, noted the unusually recent and substantial life insurance policy naming Anya Volkov as the sole beneficiary. Concurrently, Daniel Thorne, Elias's son, vocalized strong doubts regarding the accident, citing specific behavioral changes in his father and an abrupt alteration in his financial affairs. These initial red flags, though subtle, provided the impetus for a more thorough reevaluation, suggesting that the event on the mountain pass was not merely an unfortunate occurrence, but potentially the culmination of a premeditated act, systematically dismantling the facade of a simple accident.
Elias Thorne, the deceased, was a 52-year-old architect based in Boulder, Colorado. His professional life was marked by considerable achievement, establishing him as a prominent figure within his field, commanding substantial wealth derived from his successful practice and property holdings. Personally, Mr. Thorne had recently navigated a divorce, a period that left him seeking renewed connection and companionship. This vulnerability, a common human condition, would later be identified by investigators as a critical factor in the subsequent events. Anya Volkov, 25, presented herself as an art history student. Her initial interactions with Elias Thorne, commencing in November 2020 at a university exhibition, were characterized by a sophisticated charm and intellectual engagement that captivated him. This persona, carefully constructed, served as the primary instrument of psychological coercion within the emerging scheme. Her rapid progression from acquaintance to spouse, culminating in their private marriage in May 2021, raised initial concerns from Elias's son, Daniel, indicating a deviation from Elias's established patterns of behavior. Viktor Volkov, Anya's 30-year-old brother, subsequently entered Elias Thorne's life under the guise of seeking a fresh start. His integration into the Vail Villa environment in early 2022 further contributed to Elias's isolation from his established social and professional networks. Viktor's role quickly evolved into that of a financial advisor, orchestrating a complex scheme of financial fraud. His involvement provided the logistical and technical expertise required for the systematic divestment of Elias Thorne's financial resources, positioning him as an active participant in the overall criminal enterprise. The interplay between Anya's psychological manipulation and Viktor's financial machinations formed the core of the predatory strategy.
The systematic process leading to the death of Elias Thorne commenced shortly after his marriage to Anya Volkov. Following their honeymoon, the couple relocated permanently to Elias's luxurious villa in Vail, Colorado. From June 2021 through early 2022, Anya initiated a calculated program of isolating Elias from his established social and professional circles. Communication with long-standing friends and business partners became increasingly restricted, creating an environment of coercive control around Mr. Thorne. In early 2022, Viktor Volkov, Anya's brother, moved into the Vail residence, ostensibly for personal reasons. This further intensified Elias's isolation. Viktor then assumed the role of a financial advisor, introducing Elias to purported high-yield investment opportunities in Eastern Europe. Through this mechanism, Elias began transferring significant sums into shell companies, a process facilitated by Anya, who had secured power of attorney. This enabled the systematic divestment of his financial resources. Concurrently, Anya convinced Elias to liquidate his Boulder penthouse and other substantial properties, with the proceeds directed to offshore accounts controlled by Viktor. By August 2022, the financial components of the scheme were largely complete. Elias Thorne signed a $5 million life insurance policy designating Anya as the sole beneficiary. He also executed a new will, bequeathing nearly all of his remaining $15 million estate to Anya. By October 2022, Elias's fortune was substantially depleted, and the promised investment returns had failed to materialize, contributing to his emotional vulnerability and sparking suspicion. In early November 2022, Elias Thorne inadvertently overheard a suspicious telephonic exchange between Anya and Viktor, referencing money transfer and a final plan. This critical misjudgment by the perpetrators prompted Elias to clandestinely contact his long-term attorney, David Reynolds, to review his recent financial activities. The discovery of this communication by Anya Volkov on the evening of November 14, 2022, precipitated the immediate execution of the final phase of the premeditated crime. Anya suggested a dinner at a mountain restaurant where she encouraged Elias to consume excessive amounts of alcohol. On the return journey, on a deserted mountain pass, Anya insisted on driving. At a dangerous curve, she accelerated the vehicle to approximately 50 miles per hour before abruptly exiting the passenger side. The driverless vehicle impacted the safety barrier and descended into the gorge, resulting in Elias Thorne's death. The evening of November 14, 2022, marked the culmination of a meticulously orchestrated financial and psychological scheme. Elias Thorne, having inadvertently intercepted a clandestine conversation between Anya and Viktor Volkov referencing money transfer and a final plan, had secretly initiated contact with his long-term attorney, David Reynolds, seeking a review of his recent financial transactions. This critical action, indicative of Elias's burgeoning suspicion, was subsequently discovered by Anya Volkov. Faced with the imminent threat of exposure, Anya swiftly moved to execute the final phase of her plan. She proposed a romantic dinner at a secluded mountain restaurant, a setting conducive to her objective. During the meal, Anya systematically encouraged Elias to consume substantial quantities of alcoholic beverages, a tactic designed to impair his judgment and physical faculties. Forensic analysis later indicated that while Elias's blood alcohol content was elevated, it was not immediately incapacitating, suggesting a more nuanced intention of manipulation rather than outright unconsciousness. Upon departing the restaurant, on a deserted and winding mountain pass near Vail, Anya Volkov insisted on operating the vehicle. This decision was presented as an act of care, given Elias's alcohol consumption. As the vehicle navigated a particularly dangerous curve, Anya accelerated the Mercedes-Benz sedan to an approximate speed of 50 miles per hour.
At this critical juncture, Anya executed a premeditated maneuver. She abruptly exited the passenger side of the moving vehicle. The driverless car, now unpiloted at an unsafe speed, veered sharply, impacted a flimsy wooden safety barrier, and descended into a deep ravine. Elias Thorne sustained extensive trauma and was pronounced deceased at the scene by emergency medical personnel. In the early hours of November 15, 2022, Anya Volkov placed a distress call to emergency services. Her communication was characterized by a heightened state of emotional distress, consistent with an individual reporting a tragic accident. She provided an account suggesting a sudden, inexplicable loss of control of the vehicle. Local law enforcement, in their initial assessment, corroborated the narrative of an accidental incident potentially exacerbated by impaired driving conditions and the challenging terrain. Public sympathy was widely extended to Anya Volkov, who maintained the facade of a grieving widow, successfully deflecting immediate suspicion. However, the initial conclusion of an accident began to unravel in mid-December 2022. Detective Sergeant Lena Hansen, assigned to review cases with significant financial implications, identified an anomaly: the remarkably recent and substantial $5 million life insurance policy naming Anya Volkov as the sole beneficiary. Concurrently, Daniel Thorne, Elias's son, formally expressed profound doubts regarding the circumstances of his father's death. Citing Elias's uncharacteristic behavioral shifts and the abrupt, unexplained alterations to his financial portfolio, Daniel urged law enforcement to initiate a more comprehensive investigation, simultaneously engaging a private investigator. These independent observations served as the critical impetus, transforming a presumed accident into a complex criminal inquiry. The reclassification of Elias Thorne's death from accidental to suspicious initiated a comprehensive and multidisciplinary investigation, meticulously designed to deconstruct the events of November 14, 2022. Detective Sergeant Lena Hansen's initial review, coupled with Daniel Thorne's persistent advocacy, directed resources towards a forensic examination of all available evidence. Central to the intensified inquiry were the findings from the autopsy performed on Elias Thorne. While the presence of alcohol was confirmed, the blood alcohol content, though elevated, was determined not to be at a level typically associated with severe incapacitation, contrary to the initial assumptions of impaired driving. The specific trauma sustained by Elias Thorne was consistent with a high-impact deceleration event, but the absence of defensive injuries or struggle marks on his person suggested he was either unconscious or otherwise unable to react to the impending collision. This finding directly contradicted the premise of an active driver losing control, instead aligning with the scenario of a passenger in a vehicle that had been deliberately rendered driverless. Vehicle forensics provided critical corroborating evidence. Specialists meticulously examined the Mercedes-Benz wreckage. Their analysis revealed a significant mechanical anomaly. The driver's side seatbelt mechanism had been intentionally jammed in a retracted position, rendering it unusable. This modification was inconsistent with accidental malfunction and strongly suggested a deliberate act to prevent the driver from being secured. Furthermore, embedded within the vehicle's electronic control unit, ECU, investigators identified traces consistent with the operation of a remote acceleration device. This sophisticated electronic mechanism, when engaged, would permit an external party to manipulate the vehicle's speed independently of the primary driver controls. The combination of an incapacitated seatbelt and the potential for remote acceleration provided a robust framework for the hypothesis of a premeditated vehicle manipulation. Concurrently, financial investigators initiated a deep dive into Elias Thorne's divested assets. Through a meticulous audit of bank records, wire transfers, and property deeds, a complex web of transactions was uncovered. Significant sums had been systematically transferred from Elias's accounts into a series of shell companies registered in various offshore jurisdictions. These corporate entities were ultimately traced back to beneficial ownership under Viktor Volkov. The financial analysis provided a clear, quantifiable motive for the crime, linking the Volkov siblings directly to the systematic depletion of Elias Thorne's substantial wealth. By April 2023, the accumulation of forensic, financial, and testimonial evidence was overwhelming. Police obtained judicial warrants to place Anya and Viktor Volkov under active surveillance. This operation yielded crucial audio recordings, capturing incriminating conversations between the siblings. During these exchanges, Anya and Viktor discussed specific details of the scheme, the impending distribution of the $5 million life insurance proceeds, and their plans for international travel to evade apprehension. These recordings served as irrefutable proof of their conspiratorial intent and direct involvement. Faced with this comprehensive body of evidence, law enforcement executed search and arrest warrants for Anya and Viktor Volkov in late April 2023, apprehending both individuals without incident. The meticulous investigative process had successfully dismantled the carefully constructed facade of a tragic accident, revealing a calculated act of intentional homicide.
Following their apprehension in late April 2023, Anya and Viktor Volkov were formally charged with the murder of Elias Thorne and multiple counts of financial fraud. The weight of the accumulated evidence presented by the prosecution proved insurmountable. Faced with the irrefutable forensic analysis, the detailed financial trails, and the incriminating surveillance recordings, Viktor Volkov, in May 2023, made the strategic decision to cooperate with the authorities. In exchange for a reduced sentence, Viktor provided a full confession, detailing the entire conspiracy from its inception to the final, fatal act on the mountain pass. His testimony illuminated the meticulous planning, the specific roles each sibling played, and the calculated steps taken to isolate Elias Thorne and systematically divest him of his assets. Viktor's confession served as a pivotal component of the prosecution's case against Anya Volkov. The trial of Anya and Viktor Volkov commenced in late 2023. The prosecution presented a comprehensive narrative, meticulously detailing the psychological manipulation, the financial fraud, and the premeditated nature of Elias Thorne's death. Evidence included the autopsy report, vehicle forensics demonstrating the tampered seatbelt and remote acceleration device traces, the intricate financial documentation linking Viktor to the offshore accounts, and the surveillance recordings of the siblings discussing the proceeds of their crime. Anya Volkov maintained her innocence throughout the proceedings, attempting to portray herself as a victim of circumstances and a grieving widow. However, the prosecution's evidence, buttressed by Viktor's detailed testimony, systematically dismantled her claims. After a deliberative process, the jury returned a verdict of guilty against Anya Volkov for first-degree murder. Given the severity and premeditation of the crime, Anya Volkov was sentenced to life imprisonment, ensuring she would serve a minimum of 25 years before any possibility of parole, a reflection of the court's judgment on the calculated nature of her actions. Viktor Volkov, due to his substantial cooperation with the investigation and his confession, received a lesser sentence. He was sentenced to 25 years in prison for his role in the conspiracy and the murder. This outcome underscored the legal system's recognition of his assistance in securing a conviction for the primary architect of the scheme. Furthermore, the extensive financial investigation successfully traced and recovered the majority of the embezzled funds. These assets were subsequently returned to Elias Thorne's children, providing a measure of justice and restitution for the financial devastation inflicted upon the victim's estate. The legal proceedings concluded, solidifying the narrative of a calculated crime driven by avarice and deception. The case of Elias Thorne serves as a stark illustration of the vulnerabilities that can be exploited by individuals employing deceptive strategies. It highlights the insidious nature of psychological coercion and financial fraud when executed with calculated precision. The systematic isolation of Elias Thorne from his established support networks, coupled with the sophisticated manipulation of his financial assets, underscores the importance of vigilance within personal and professional relationships. This case provides a critical warning regarding the potential for individuals to fall prey to predatory behavior, often masked by charm and manufactured affection. The unraveling of the crime was a testament to the methodical application of forensic science and investigative rigor. The ability of law enforcement to move beyond an initial accident classification, leveraging detailed autopsy results, advanced vehicle forensics, and intricate financial analysis was paramount in securing justice. The meticulous reconstruction of events based solely on tangible evidence provided an irrefutable account of premeditation and execution. Ultimately, the memory of Elias Thorne endures not as a victim of a random tragedy, but as an individual whose life was systematically extinguished by a complex criminal enterprise, serving as a somber reminder of the vulnerabilities that exist and the imperative for forensic truth.